GP Tokyo was the last major event for Force of Will in Japan before Worlds. Turnout was expected to be much bigger than both the previous Fukuoka and Nagoya GPs, since this was the last shot at a Worlds invite, and there were now 3 invites instead of 2. I ended up practicing a variety of decks of different types for the event in an attempt to play around the meta. I really wanted to take Kirik, but Japan's ruling on his enter effect completely guts him against Cherie and a few other popular Resonator-heavy decks. I also tinkered a bit with Mikage, which I might do a video for in the coming weeks, but ultimately settled on Cherie since she has a lot of answers to specific decks on top of having the dumbest and most overpowered lineup of Resonators I've ever seen in this damn game. I did try to alter some of the things around to deal with meta matchups, so I'll blow through all the standard stuff real quick. You run dolls because why wouldn't you? They have overinflated stats, ridiculous and stupid effects, and can potentially replace themselves on cast. They also come with pseudo-swiftness since Cherie doesn't give a damn about playing anything on her own turn. Counterspells are there to stop your opponent from playing cards. Millennia Bond gives you extra counters to stop your opponent from playing even less things, including their own counter cards. On the off chance your opponent does get to play a card, you can use Final Battle to remove it. Bear Magic helps with this too by lowering stats on things or removing its effects. This is particularly helpful in the mirror where you can deny your opponent draws off of their own Puppet Maker. Okay, time to talk about the only card in the deck that isn't standard. I picked Pricia as an extra form of destruction with a large body. I'm not really a fan of Shade since he's only good in the mirror and your opponent can easily answer to his one-time effect. Pricia destroys the thing on enter and boosts herself, and then becomes a time bomb for the next turn when she can do it again. It forces an answer out of your opponent unless they want to have their field wiped of bigger threats. Pricia can even clear out a guard doll that's post-boost if she's already eliminated something. The only way most decks would be able to remove her is Final Battle, which is either 12 stone or 2400 life Endeavor, assuming she got her effect off when she entered. The side had a lot of targeted hate cards, mostly for Lumia, who was projected to either be the most popular or second most popular deck at the event. Unseen Pressure kills just about anything that isn't a boss monster for her, and it also helps in the rare situation a Favor deck popped up. Abdul is much the same, but helps with a wider variety of decks since plenty of different strategies rely on enter automatics to get their plays going. Alright, now that I have this snooze fest of a deck profile done, let's get into the matches. My first match was against Diversity Palace Aimul. This is actually a considerably bad matchup for Cherie if she's unprepared. Diversity runs a lot of cheap and low stat resonators with replacement effects, which are things you typically don't want to waste counterspells on. Top it off with their only non-resonator card being Diversity Palace, and you'll quickly find that anywhere from 4 to 7 of your counterspells are now completely useless. Diversity Palace takes advantage of the fact that most Cherie is built to fight the mirror rather than to keep control regardless of what you're fighting. Black Tears, Destruction of the Portal, and my 2 main deck cleaning dolls ended up being the MVPs for this set. I took the first round in a 2-1 victory. My second round opponent was playing Red Cherie. I wasn't too worried about this one, since the Millennia Bonds in the main deck would take care of most of his early game discard and give me opportunities to chip in damage as needed. He was running Nullstone with Majin Dark Elf, but that can't overcome a quick cast 07 Last Audience who can block the attack. There really wasn't much he could do, as I effectively shut him out 2 games in a row and stopped him from ever hitting an optimal number of cards in my grave to remove with Evil Elemental. Also, things like Rachel are not nearly as threatening when they can't constantly be brought back into the field via an effect like Lumia. I took this game 2-0. Round 3 was against a Lumia and ended in a complete blowout from my opponent. Game 1 he never saw a Blasting Wave, so he couldn't play Ataractia, and by the time he could hardcast his Resonators, I had enough will to hardcast Severing Winds against them. Game 2 I was able to side in all my hate cards, and it became a repeat of the first game. Even if he did get an Ataractia to stick, it didn't last for more than a turn, and Abdul would end up nullifying whatever he played. My own Pricia ended up closing the game out here, destroying his Rachels and a Valentina he had. Round 4 is where things started to go wrong. Not because the matches got harder, but because I was getting paired down. My opponent was a Panda player, and while I don't doubt the strength of Tigress and his crazy swarm tactics, I wasn't too worried about it since I had Abdul to deal with most of his shenanigans. My opponent was running a Shinshin and Ray Ray variant, so I only had to disrupt one part of the combo to secure victory. This was another swift 2-0 where Pricia was able to remove a lot of the high stat threats. Despite the fact I was able to deal with his main combo effectively, Tigress can easily build up a decent board of cheap but cost-efficient resonators that become harder to deal with as the game goes on. Final Battle pulled the most weight in this round by clearing out problem fields before they became too big to handle. I was paired down once more in round 5. This meant that I had to have a perfect 5-0 record if I wanted a shot at top 8, which was a little infuriating considering my record was completely spotless up to this point. I ended up against the 3rd place Cherie that ran Null Page and Intervention. Or rather, the 8th place Cherie that was running the same deck as 3rd because they're buddies, but whatever. This was a really difficult matchup because not much was going to save me from Null Page outside of hardcasting Severing. Intervention is a highly underrated card since it can give you up to 3 effects for 1 will, each of them being pretty bonkers for the cost. Null Page makes it so that the Legend 3 effect of having an addition to destroy is always live unless your opponent straight counters that Null Page. Page also helps in the mirror since you can remove your own Puppet Maker or Last Audience to screw over your opponent's plays. He beat me 2-0. I ended up placing 9th in a repeat of GP Nagoya where tiebreakers ended up screwing me. I believe there were 7 people with 4-1 records, and me being paired down twice meant my victory in round 4 added up to less, and that my loss in round 5 hurt me more. If I had known this would have been the outcome, I think I would have been more willing to hop on Kiriko Mikage. In fact, I'm pretty sure this is divine punishment for even touching Cherie instead of one of those two. Note to self, play what you want, not what you feel pressured to. I absolutely hate playing Cherie. At least doll-centric builds. There's nothing fun about sitting back and not playing the game on your turn and saving everything for your opponents. There have been plenty of control rulers over the years that prove you can have interaction while still playing a hard control game, or at least have strategies that can be disrupted and risks you have to take in order to get your strategy going. I find the biggest problem with Cherie is that her entire deck is quick cast, which is pretty damn stupid. Her Resonators already have bloated stat lines, making it so they can freely punish other decks for even trying to play the game. While a lot of players tend to harp on Cherie's Grimoire ability for being why she's disgustingly powerful, I'd argue that it's because of her Resonator line. The Grimoire offers one-time counters to specific matchups, but it's often the 8/8 2-drop and 11/11 3-drop dolls that finish the games for Cherie. On top of that, Cherie has access to a card that permanently pumps all of her dolls' stats even more and turns them all into self-replacing high-stat bodies. Despite my distaste for how Cherie is optimally played, I don't think I'd ban her so much as I'd want her support removed. Her gimmick is interesting but manageable. Grimoire gives her specific answers to certain situations, outside of maybe 1 or 2 cards that have no business being there, but dolls set her out of control. You see, story cards don't give her an actual win condition. They just stall the game out to give Cherie time to exhaust her opponent. The problem is that these stall tactics can be combined with very cost-efficient quick-cast Resonators to ensure that Cherie always has a play, even if her opponent is being just as passive as she is. No other ruler could do this type of strategy and hope to win. I do think Cherie has clear weaknesses, but they aren't pushed far enough, or those weaknesses are negated by powerful cards from the previous cluster. Block events in Europe have shown that her power is much weaker without a lot of staples from Lapis Cluster, and she falters against plenty of other decks. Who knows where the company will go here on tackling Cherie, but I think she adds an interesting control core that can be spun in a lot of ways. As it stands, I think Cherie could be brought into line by removing Last Audience, Doll Audience, Puppet Maker, and Patrolling Guard Doll. I find Last Audience to be a unique and interesting Resonator, but its stat line is way overblown. It's overcurved when compared to the removal options that hit it, and you'll be hard-pressed to find anything that isn't a 3 cost that can kill it in battle. Doll Audience is just a dumb boost effect. The fact it can target itself makes it the same potential turn 2 defensive threat that Eva was. While it can't nearly get as out of control as Eva, its utility ruins most strategies and can make Last Audience even harder to kill. Puppet Maker isn't a doll, but the utility he provides to them and Cherie is unmatched by any other archetypal boost Resonator. You have to have 3 stories up to gain his stat boost, but his real value comes from his other effect that lets you draw any time a doll enters your side of the field. Since over half of Cherie's deck will be dolls anyways, it just means she'll never lose out on hand advantage, and it gives even more perks to her already shitty passive style. Guard Doll is just plain stupid. I don't know how this one even got the okay. Its boost is too much for too little cost, it already has decent stats, and once again, nothing on curve can fight it. The amount of situational removal you'd have to run to kill Cherie's Resonator line is offset by the 8 to 9 counterspells the deck will have waiting for you. As we move into the next cluster, I fear for what could become of Cherie. Even if the cards that push her into near unbeatable territory rotate out, there's a chance something as powerful and generic could come along and take its place.